It's really hard to know exactly how to address a topic like this, the issue of 9/11, the occult, and Jesus. Um, this is a big topic with so many implications, and it's such a sensitive thing for so many people, particularly those of us who are Americans. Although this event has really impacted the lives of every person who lived through it globally, whether they realize it or not. Um, by now, most people in the U.S. are actually at the point of doubting the official story of 9/11. Um, but from what I've noticed, most people who are evangelical Christians in the U.S. don't really, mentally, they just don't want to go there. They don't want to even think about it. Um, as one of my friends told me about this stuff, he said something like, looking at this conspiracy theory stuff really only makes me depressed. It makes me angry, and it doesn't really have any positive influence on my life and my family, and so I'm just choosing not to look at it. But although I understand where he's coming from, I think that's a very short-sighted, small way of looking at this. It is true that looking at 9/11 is kind of like opening a door to another room, and inside that room, when you open the door, all you see is just really ugly, dark, horrible stuff. The implications for your worldview, if all of this 9/11 truth stuff is actually true, the implications for your worldview are just more than what most people are willing to go through, and so they just choose not to look at it. But we have to look at it. Uh, I'm speaking as someone who actually is a Christian. I spent 7 years outside the U.S. doing missions work in one country before I moved to another country where I'm currently involved in church planting. My religious views happen to be pretty orthodox. My favorite Christian teachers who would be well known are people like Ravi Zacharias, R.C. Sproul, John Piper, um, William Lane Craig, people like that. Those are the people that I like to listen to. I'm a fairly orthodox guy, but I don't see or hear much of anybody in the Christian evangelical community dealing with this issue. And I think that this is really important because this was not just a geopolitical event. This event, 9/11, that you're seeing right here, was primarily a spiritual event more than anything else. This was highly occultic. This was a big move in the cosmic battle that's been going on for as long as creation has been around, the big battle between God and Satan and those who are with him. And we as Christians need to acknowledge that and look at it and to process it and to fit it into our worldview somehow. And when I started doing that, it was massively uncomfortable. When I realized that 9/11 was an inside job, or that it was maybe an outside job, an inside job with outside help, however you want to look at it, when I realized that we were being lied to, it was worldview shattering. And it's taken me years to process this. I was angry for a while. You don't want to think about this kind of stuff. And nobody helped me to process it well. And that made it hard. And I'm putting this series of videos together so that other people don't have to go through the anguish that I went through trying to process this in terms of becoming awake and having a really coherent worldview. So I think that when you go through this and when you look at this stuff properly, it doesn't have to be gloomy and dark and depressing. There really is light at the end of the tunnel, and when you get to a certain point in looking at this and putting together your worldview as a Christian with these things as a part of it, you do reach a point of actual joy in your worldview, a sense of joy and peace, and a new appreciation for the sovereignty of God and the work that Jesus did on the cross. And so it really helps you to, I think, be a better witness to the people around you when you have a good, coherent worldview that incorporates these things. And so that's why I'm putting all of this together, is for the sake of your joy, if you are a Christian, and your ability to reach the people around you with the gospel. Because really, honestly, the people around you in your life who are not Christians, if they're awake to this kind of thing, and it seems like more people who are awake to 9/11 being a false flag event, most of those people who are awake to 9/11, they're not Christians. There's a disproportional amount of people who are awake who are not believers. We as Christians claim to be interested in the truth, but so many Christians are unwilling to look at this stuff because it makes them uncomfortable. And so when you try to share the gospel with somebody who is into this 9/11 truth stuff and they're not a Christian, they're believing this stuff. And I got news for you. They're believing it because it's actually true. The 9/11 truth movement, there's a lot of truth in that. 9/11 was something other than what we're told. And they realize that. And if you don't realize that, and if you as the Christian do not realize that, then they're going to just write off anything that you tell them, because they're going to think that you don't have a firm grasp on the truth. From their standpoint, they're thinking, how can you tell me about eternal truth when you can't even realize the basic truths of the world that you're living in? And they're just going to tune you out. And so it's important as Christians that we understand the spiritual implications and the spiritual angles of 9/11. And it's important for our own spiritual well-being, and it's important for evangelism and outreach to the people around us, to be able to, as Peter said, to be able to have an answer for the people who ask us for the hope that's in us. So I've put this together, admittedly not in a very slick format. I'm just putting all these videos together on a mobile phone. And I have a job, I have a family, I have a farm. I don't have a whole lot of time to put all this stuff together. So it's not all that slick, but it's very rich in content if you're willing to take the time to go through it. And I hope that you do. I want to start out by showing you, just summarizing another video that I've posted about the first victim on 9/11 and some strange stuff about him. This is what clued me into the idea that there really was something occultic and strange going on with 9/11. I only came across this just a few months ago. I've realized that 9/11 was not what we're told for years, but I didn't realize there was an occultic angle of it until very recently. And I want to start out by showing you that as kind of a hook to draw you in to the idea that what I'm telling you actually really does have substance. It has teeth to it. That this is not something that's easily debunked. This is something that we have to come to terms with, and we have to deal with, whether you're a Christian or whether you're not. The stuff that I'm going to show you in this series of videos, starting with this next portion here in this video, is this is stuff that'll change your worldview if you really process it and come to terms with it. So let's look at the first thing I want to show you, which is Danny Lewin, the first guy killed supposedly on 9/11.